Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm your host Pete, and today we're going to be digging into some suspension work. As you know, your bike needs regular maintenance, and one of those things that often gets overlooked is your suspension fork. Sure, it springs up and down, but is it giving you the best performance that it can? Oftentimes there's only a little bit of lubrication in the lowers on these forks, and once that dries up or gets used up over time, you get excessive wear going on your seals and a little bit of drag that is reducing the function of your fork. So today we're going to perform the 100-hour service on a Suntour Raidon 34. We're going to replace the seals, we're going to put fresh oil down inside, clean out all the dirt and grime that's gotten in there, and the only thing we're not going to do is replace the air spring slider. Suntour does suggest you replace those on rebuilds, but I've done a pretty good job of keeping my fork cleaned and lubed, so I don't think I'm going to have any issues with that having any wear to it. If you're having any problems with your fork leaking air, replace your air seal. Wink. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and get into this project, and we're going to need a few things to get this job done. You're going to need some 80 weight suspension oil from the guys at Suntour. You're also going to need a set of seals. We got 34mm seals. They are pre-lubricated, and they come with some foam rings that we're going to douse in oil before we put them in there. We're also going to be using a little bit of this Con-Pana grease from SRSuntour. It's going to be very similar to your Slick Honey or Slick Oleum, whatever you're using, but it is Suntour's specified lubrication for this. So we're going to use what they say to use. Use our shock pump, thread it fully on. Once you have the shock pump fully engaged, you will see that the pressure comes up on the dial. This shock is set at 62 psi, so when I pump this back up, I want to go to about 64, and when I pull this off, it's going to lose a few psi, and that'll even us about out. So what you want to do is go ahead and remove this cap here. We're going to use our screwdriver and wedge it in there between the silver and the red to help us pull it down, because it's got a tight O-ring on it. And you want to try to keep it as straight as you can so you don't damage this guy. If you wiggle too much, this will pop out. Won't break anything, but it can cause you some problems. So now we're going to open the quick release. With the Suntour Q-lock, you want to push in this little tab, twist a little bit. Now you'll notice that it's going to stay still, and I can just pull the wheel right out. I'm going to have a couple of spacers fall out because this is a 100mm wheel and a 110mm fork. And since we can see this dirt right here, let's go ahead and wipe that out of there. And get extra dirt out. And since I have a Magura brake, we're going to use the T25 to go ahead and break the brake free here. And unbolt the brake from the lowers. That's out. Now that's out. I come up the leg, disconnect this with a 3mm Allen wrench. What I like to do here is just unscrew this a little bit, turn it to the side, and that'll allow for the cable to pop right out. Then we tighten this back down so we don't lose it when we're cleaning the fork. Make sure you put on your eye protection. And now that we've got everything set up to this point, we're going to go ahead and let the air out of the fork. Okay, so we're going to take our 8mm Allen wrench, stick it into the rebound hole. You'll notice it wasn't very tight. It doesn't need to be super snug. So we're just going to break it free. Come over to the other side with our 5mm. Gonna break it free as well. A couple turns. Alright, so we gave a couple turns out. You want to make sure you've got several threads fully inserted. Now we've got the hammer here, rubber mallet. We're going to whack the bolt. Whack the bolt. That should have broken it free all the way. So now we're going to go ahead, remove this bolt, And there's going to be a little bit of oil coming out of there. And we're going to remove that bolt. So as you can see, there's plenty of grit and grime down in these forks. And that's what we're going to be cleaning out. Using our 27mm flat face socket, we're going to go ahead and crack this free. Now that it's loose, we're going to go ahead and take it out all the way. Still nice and clean on the inside. Okay, I'm going to reach in here and pull out my tokens. Now on the air spring lower side with a 24mm wrench, go ahead and break that free. So on these forks you have a negative return spring. It is a physical spring. Now that we have that part done, we're going to go ahead and clean the fork. Go ahead, use our spray, RockShox suspension cleaner. And we're going to clean all the way around this hole, all the way through this hole, and make sure that this tube is as clean as it can be. We're just going to push those all the way through, and you want to use something nice and soft and smooth. It's not going to scratch the inside. I have some plastic hosing I just use. Since we have that out of there, we'll go ahead and get this cleaned up. Use some muck off wash on the outside. Turn on some water. The fork's a scrub. Rinse all that dirt off. Using your Park Tools heavy duty wrench, that it's a tire lever, you can just get underneath there, give it a pull, make sure not to scratch the inside of the fork. You don't want to scratch this casting right here. We'll go ahead and pull those out. As you can see, they are dirty as can be, but still a little clean on one side. I'm going to wipe any excess grit and grime out of there. So you can see a little bit of that black is just stuck to those wipers. So we're going to take some of this. Try to get those polished back as clean as we can. Take my little plastic wire, push that all the way down. We want to try to get all that moisture out. And just fish that back through like that. You can use a wooden dowel rod or anything that's just not going to scratch the inside of your tubes. Do the same thing on the other side. Probably use a cleaner rag if you're smarter than me. And just push that through there and get that back out the top. And double check that you don't have any paper debris left in there. Get all that grease out. We got that out. I want to get this clean. I know it might seem silly to be concerned with getting every little bit of this clean down here because it's just going to get dirty again. But we don't want any dirt or contaminants going back in there when we put this thing back together and we're putting the oil in. What I like to do is go ahead and fill up a cap full of 30 weight OW30 RockShox suspension fluid and just let these soak in there. Squish them around so they get coated, and then we'll let those soak while we're doing this next bit. I'm going to go ahead and remove the Energizer ring so we don't damage it. Then we go ahead and set this in the press tool. And this should just press right in to place. On some other forks and some other manufacturers, you might have to hammer this into place, but we just need to push that down on there. And now that that's done, we're going to go ahead, Put the Energizer ring back on so we don't lose it. Now, once again, no oil on here. Go ahead, hold your fork leg, try to keep everything level. Press that fully in. You want to make sure that you're completely flush all the way around on both sides. So now that we have those fully pressed in, we're going to go ahead, separate our oil seals, and just tuck it in underneath the new seal. There we go. It's all the way inserted and fully around. We don't want this to get out of place or out of shape so that it will bind up and cause any problem when we're sliding the forks back on. So all right, so now you can see perfect hole, perfect hole. And we're going to go ahead and open this up, scoop just a little bit of that in and around those seals. Yes, they've got some on there, but I like to have plenty in there. So we want to make sure this thing is nice and lubricated. I'm going to put some on that stanchion right there where I know it makes contact. And we want to clean all the grease off here. Take the pick, get your O-ring off. Clean this all up. All the grease off of it. And that's just because we don't want any of that old dirt getting back in there. Wipe off that O-ring. If you had any trouble with your air system leaking, I would suggest that you replace all of these pieces. You want to make sure that you don't have any grease on this top cap either. Grease on these threads can allow for it to back off. So get our lower cap, get it nice and clean, get everything off of that. Clean this up as much as we can. Keep everything on there nice and clean. So you want to get your air plug, get it nice and clean. This is your air piston top cap. Down on the bottom, everything fits together just like that. So now, I'm going to take our con panna and just slather it all up and down this spring. Oops. And all of the little moving pieces of this, we want that covered back in con panna just like it was before. It's going to reduce creaking and squeaking and shock noises. So now we got all that done. Go ahead, put that on. Put our top cap on, and we're going to go back into the fork. And we're going to be sure to take some con panna, get it up inside the hole there. Make sure that our air cap is fully lubed. We want lube all around this guy, because this is what it's going to be sliding up and down on the inside of the fork, holding the air inside. We don't want that to strip out or anything. So now we take our assembly here, simply press that back in, get all that grease up inside. All right. Go ahead and put some con panna on the tokens. Insert my tokens. All right, so now that we got that on, go ahead, tighten this back down. Nice and tight. I've got a pretty low ceiling in here, so it's a little easier to do this next part upside down. And you want to make sure you get all the pieces back on there, including this little guy. It goes on there right there, just like that. So now, we want to slide the fork back on. So I like to go ahead and just peel the Energizer rings off and let them slide up the fork. Insert it in, slide it up. Go ahead and reset your Energizer rings. And you'll probably need to put these fully back in place once you get it upside right. So now we're going to go ahead and inject about 10 cc's of OW30 suspension fluid into each side of here. And that's just going to help keep it running smooth for a little bit longer. The guys at Suntour say that's optional. You don't have to put oil in there. The grease is all that they say you need. So now, I'm going to push those all the way down. On this side, we're going to use that bolt. Nope, on this side, we're going to use that bolt. And on this side, we're going to use that bolt. So, take your 5mm, tighten that up. Click, torque wrench clicked. I felt it. So now using an 8mm, we're going to tighten this side up. There we go, nice and tight. Take your cap, reinstall it. Wipe off any extra grease and oil. And now that we've got everything set back up, we're going to go ahead and inflate this fork back to 63 psi. We're going to go ahead and reinstall the wheel. And now we need to reset our brake and we'll be done. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and reattach the rear brake. Just slide the caliper back in as such. Put those bolts in there. Theoretically, you should be able to just squeeze your brake, tighten your caliper, and it should get centered up. All right, brake's running good. Well, thanks for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and found it informative. If there's anything that you need help with in your bicycle repair, leave a comment down below and I will try to come up with a video for your service. I have a lot of experience and I get to work on stuff daily, so if there's something you need help on, let me know and we will do that job for you and walk you right through it. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, eat a donut, and stay rad.